Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Thrive in China Roundtable, where we are looking at low-cost training for individuals within Chinese companies. Training staff is great for business. It motivates employees, it boosts staff retention, and it drives efficiency. And more importantly, as a foreign manager, it makes you lose less of your marbles. But obviously, the biggest concern for most companies is the financial budget that is required to train employees in China. Now, is it possible or even advisable to invest in staff training if you do have a tight budget? The simple answer is yes, especially in a jurisdiction like China, where staff retention is a big issue. I actually just got off a call with a client of mine who onboarded 2 new employees. One lasted 3 days and another lasted 10 days. So that's just to say that it is difficult to find skilled workers, but it's also more difficult to actually keep people within your organization, especially these millennials nowadays. Now, when it comes to low-cost training, you need a clear plan of attack. And this is in order to reap the benefits and rewards of low-cost learning and development programs. And today, I'm going to show you a little bit of the agenda. Today, I hope to go through a series of measures that you can implement that will not break your budget or your financial needs, but just help you to prosper, retain staff, and make sure that you can actually delegate work to your team rather than you yourself doing everything. So the first thing I want to talk about is identifying your needs. Now, this is something that I was talking to my client today about, was you seem to be hiring people left, right, and center, and they never seem to be the right fit. But do you actually know what you are looking for in the people that you are hiring? It's not just about the responsibilities they're going to do, but do you actually understand what skill sets they should have? What type of motivation level they should have? I mean, you also need to have an understanding of the type of character you're looking for within your own organization. Now, businesses in China currently, with the lockdowns and COVID policies, expect to encounter some form of skills shortage over the next 12 months in China. With 70% of all foreigners exiting China, there is, just generally speaking, a shortage of hands in the market. There are also Chinese that are moving, mainland Chinese that are moving from the big cities back to their hometowns because they're tired of being separated. So there is a shortage of individuals, and there's obviously then a shortage of individuals with certain skill sets. Now, in addition to all of that, because everybody is going through this, there is competition from your competitors who are poaching individuals left, right, and center from one company to another company, adding more pressure into the market. So the biggest question also is, how can you differentiate yourself from your competitors in terms of retaining these employees? So before you embark on training programs, even free ones, it is vital to understand what skills employees are lacking, what knowledge they need to perform effectively. And the most thorough way to do this is to conduct a needs analysis to find out the difference between actual performance and expected performance. Now, the types of analysis that you can do is an organizational analysis. What are you trying to accomplish with your startup in China or with your business in China? People-based assessments, who would benefit most from training and what are their learning styles? Task-based checks, what are the main duties and skills that are required? And a cost-benefit analysis, what's the return on investment from the training? Now, since most companies in China don't add training into their budgets at all when they come into China, it is likely to be restricted what you can actually offer your employees. Now, one of the things that I offer my employees is you've got to imagine their mother tongue is mainland Chinese. They know fully well how to write emails in Chinese. But when an employee is client facing, they need to be able to write in English. Well, at least for me, they need to be able to write in English properly. So one of the trainings that I do offer to my staff is how to write emails in English. And by emails, I mean business emails. How to write business emails in English without being aggressive and putting actually our clients off. That is a training that I offer, and I offer it to every single employee, regardless of seniority, with an outsourced provider. And it has helped tremendously in just the communication level in terms of that. Another thing that I offer is also English language negotiation and creating certain business scenarios so that my staff know the vocabulary and are aware of certain vocabulary when it comes up in English. So these are the small little things that I'm offering to them that will not only help my business and prevent me from firefighting, but they will then be independent to be able to work with clients directly, especially those that are based within mainland China. Okay, now it is also important when you are a small team to evaluate the very simple things that they're lacking. For me, it's email writing and it's communication level in the English language. What is it for you? Is it negotiation skills? Is it working with Excel? I mean, that's a mandatory skill set because I mainly hire accountants that they know how to use Excel. But also for me, another criteria is what software systems, ERP systems, are they familiar with utilizing? How deep do they go into certain modules on the ERP systems, etc. You've got to analyze a lot of this in the interview phase. I also know a lot of providers that actually, when they say that they use SAP and they need accountants who know SAP, they do SAP test exams as part of the interview phase. These are things you can always implement to understand what people's backgrounds are. Now, what I do is I look for online training, especially with COVID regulations and policies. Previously, a lot of things would be done in-house, meaning they would go to certain places to do these types of trainings. Now I am looking for online secure methodologies for training. Although I will say, I feel that in terms of my staff, the message is only really brought in when they have live trainings. But at least these trainings have been able to continue during the Shanghai lockdowns and during COVID. The most popular step taken to improve staff retention is through increasing your learning and development opportunities, especially if you find that the person is good, you like them, you actually get along with them. Let's just improve their skill set, right? How much is it really going to cost you at the end of the day? And I will show you a couple of examples where it's really not going to break your bank. Now, if training is the best way to keep talent, it's surely a must for any company, new or old, in the Chinese market, where the loss of key people could be disastrous at the critical early stage that many of you are in, okay? For me, when I started up, I had one person. They needed to help me with everything. They were accountants, but they were helping me with marketing initiatives. They were helping me with XYZ. Your first team, the first 2-3 people you're going to have on board, should be flexible enough to do a lot of tasks for you outside of what they are actually trained in, because you are a startup. You need all hands on deck to be able to grow the business, okay? Now, online training can provide the cost-effective option for newly incorporated China companies without the physical space and funds to host live trainings. So like I said, in the last 3 years, most of the trainings have actually been done online. And the advantage for the employees is that they can train from home in the mornings and the evenings, or at their desks at lunchtime. You're not taking into account traveling. In the past, a lot of trainings were also done out of Shanghai, so I would have to pay for hotels and travel costs. Sometimes it would be put in the package, but it did increase then the bills. So it is important to find the time and the allocation for that. So one avenue, for example, is going to the universities. So as an example, here is free online classes, that are done, free online classes that are being done by the Peking University. You have Chinese for beginners. This is an old slide, so obviously this is from 2019, but you just Google it, Peking University, free online courses, and you'll find a whole variety of things, whether it's learning Chinese, learning English, whether it's also simple skill sets, data science, data analysis. This is what you can find. If Google is not working for you, then you should also try and utilize Bing.com, because you'll find more access to that. Now, this is an example from Peking University. You will find free online trainings from Fudan University, from CEIBS, which is the Chinese European International Business University, I believe. I think I've spelled that wrong. But there's CEIBS. There's a whole bunch of universities out there that are offering this. And, you know, these courses are not long. Like this Chinese for beginners is 7 weeks long, 1 to 2 hours per week. Not complicated, okay? Now, you can also train from within your company. And what does this mean? You may want to bring in outside experts, industry influencers, or training professionals. There are a whole bunch of coaches, I want to say, or mentors in certain specific areas and skill sets that you can bring into your organization to provide trainings as well. And they're honestly, for the package, and if you've got multiple employees that are doing it, you are not looking at something that is more than 20 to 30,000 renminbi. If you divide that by 5 employees, the cost is minimal, okay? There are some providers out there that will charge you anywhere from 100 to 200,000 renminbi for these types of programs, okay? But with COVID, due to restrictions, a lot of these prices have gone down, okay? Now, the advantage of training within is the fact that with these trainers or coaches or mentors, you can build tailor-made programs that are specific to the skill sets that your staff are lacking. So this actually means that you can truly tailor this to what you want and what you need and what you expect your staff to come out with. Now, the beauty of this is that it's also kind of a team building exercise if you really include everybody in the team to be part of this training. So it's a bonding experience ultimately for everybody. And like I said, it does offer retention within staff. Now, the next one is get expert local support. And while online training is cost effective, you can't be expert local support, especially from other entrepreneurs who have firsthand experience in the Chinese market. The good news is that there's a wealth of support available in China for free or at a marginal cost, including startup networks, educational events. This support ranges from training on how to launch a company in China to forums on finding and utilizing training opportunities for employees. The avenues that I use for this are the trade associations, the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, many of the country China specific chambers of commerce, and they are throughout China: Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Chengdu, Wuhan. A lot of these chambers have multiple offices throughout China offering seminars, conferences, and training opportunities. What is the cost? The cost is the membership to those chambers. But even if you don't want to become a member of the chamber, you can still take advantage of going to these events. You just have to pay the non-member rates. You can also take advantage of the trainings. You just pay the non-member rates, which obviously will be more expensive. To give you an example of what this looks like, this is the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. There are member training programs that are specific, and then there are online training programs as well. Leadership, strategic thinking, which ultimately means think outside of the box, etc. So these are all leadership programs. There's also AI big data course for everyone. And They're either in Chinese or English. Obviously, the majority of them are in Chinese because you are trying to foster skill sets in your Chinese employees. Then you've got the British Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. Again, they've got the training school series and training credits, meaning they also offer credits and certifications to individuals that take their courses. So I like this because if you look through all of this, okay, this is 2018, 2019, but it's kind of similar throughout the years. You've got influencing and negotiation skills, time management, building stakeholder relationships, conflict management, key client management, email and business writing. That's the one that I've been taking advantage of in the English language. Business finance for everyone. You might find that a lot of your marketing staff and sales staff have no clue on how to read a P&L and a balance sheet. They've never been trained to do that. They are marketing people, meaning they've got creative minds. But when they get up the ladder and they have a certain level of seniority, they're going to be given KPIs that will reflect on the P&L, and they have to understand how to read and understand a P&L. You've got consultative selling skills workshops, WeChat for business, best practices, case studies, etc., and the list goes on. Okay, so the British Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai is another avenue. Obviously, all of these events, you can be a member, non-member to participate. You will have to pay an additional fee to the Chamber of Commerce to participate. And if I remember correctly, it depends if it's a half day or full day, but it's anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 renminbi. Really not expensive, okay, in the grand scheme of things. Then you've got the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, also offering training. This is an example of one of the trainings, which is communication, influencing, and negotiation skills. You do not have to be a member of all of these chambers of commerce. Nearly every single chamber offers a training section. It's not themselves that are doing the trainings. They use outsourced providers to come in, but because the chamber is organizing it, they get discount rates from those coaching enterprises, from those little schools. And that's why I recommend them, because they get this discount price. Then you've got the China-Britain Business Council. So for those of you that are based in the UK, this is a great avenue also for training. You've got business clinics, cultural training, masterclass series. You can learn from industry leaders on how they have done their market entry, their expansion, their scaling up in the Chinese market. Now, in every single country, there is so I'm not talking about inside China, I'm talking outside of China. Nearly every single country has a China-related association. In the UK, it's the China-Britain Business Council. In Germany, for example, there are 3 associations. One called China Forum Bayern, another one called the Ostasiatische Verein, and another one called the Deutsch-Chinesische Vereinigung. All 3 offer trainings. Then in Canada, you've got the Canadian China Business Council. In the US, you've got the American China Business Council. I'm thinking where else in the top of my mind. But there are these associations that are readily available. In addition to that, if people aren't aware, there is also the Hong Kong Trade Development Council that has offices throughout Europe, the United States, where they also offer trainings on doing business in China. And sometimes they are very specific trainings. So don't underestimate, I don't think I put the Hong Kong Trade Development Council in this, but please be aware of these Hong Kong China associations in your home jurisdiction. Because like I said last week about tips on doing business in China and what you need to know from a cultural standpoint, is that you are building a bridge between your head office and your China operation. Please don't make the assumption that only your China staff need training. In many instances, you will need to provide training to those staff in your home jurisdiction to understand at least the cultural training aspect of how to communicate, discuss, work with the team in China, as well as other third parties. For true startups, so really for entrepreneurs, one association, it's not an association, it's a network, let me put it another way, a network which is called ChinaAccelerator.com. And what's really nice about ChinaAccelerator.com is that they have, you can't really see it on the website here, but you have a whole section on mentors who are very open to mentoring you on your business, giving you advice, strategies, etc., on how to do business in China, how to grow and scale in your business. And you can find people that might also have experience in your industry as well as in your sector. ChinaAccelerator.com also helps to find investors locally in China, as well as third parties that may help to grow and scale your business. Another great avenue. What is nice about China Accelerator is you don't actually have to be part of the program. You can be a mentor. You can also join the events just to listen in. And that's a great advantage. The next item that I want to go through is share resources with other new companies in China. So, and again, a lot of this you would have to do with the chambers of commerce, because you would have to know who are new companies and who are not new companies. But the beauty of going to a networking event or going to a seminar or conference that is held by a chamber of commerce or an association is the networking component. It's meeting like-minded individuals or people who are in the same phase of entry in China, or even might be further along than you, where you can share ideas, you can share your war stories, your successes. One of the most beautiful things I find about China is that nobody keeps anything inside. Everybody wants to share their experiences and what they have gone through. Remember, whether you are a brand new startup in China or whether you're a newly incorporated subsidiary or whether you've been in China for 10, 15 years, in my opinion, we are all on the same level. China has consistently evolved itself with new regulations that everybody is learning on a day-to-day basis. I keep myself updated on a day-to-day basis with all the newest regulations pertaining to my sector in terms of corporate compliance and whatnot, so that I can inform that on my clients. But keep in mind, you're all on the same level. You're all learning together. Why not collaborate together? For me, when a new company, even if they are a third generation organization, having been set up 150, 200 years ago, when you enter China, you're new. You are a startup. And when resources are tight, one option worth considering is partnering with other startups or small businesses to provide learning and development. The more people you put into a development program, the cheaper the cost is going to be per employee. So keep this in mind. Alternatively, try and swap knowledge and experience. I do that with one partner of mine. Every 2 weeks we have a call and we do brainstorming initiatives. He's in a completely different sector and industry than me, but we're mentoring each other, if you will, for the Chinese market in terms of how we market ourselves. Does he have ideas? It's lovely to have somebody to brainstorm with. It can be very lonely building your business in China, only getting told off by HQ because you're not hitting your KPIs, you're not hitting your numbers, to talk to somebody outside of your industry and have a conversation, have a beer, have a glass of wine every 2 weeks, and just brainstorm. How can we help each other to build our businesses and stop HQ from nagging us? I encourage a lot of my clients to start off their businesses in business centers. Like this, your team is not randomly alone in an office space. They're actually in a co-working space where they are automatically networking with other individuals that are also working in this co-working space. In China, you've got CEO Suite, Regis, Executive Center, WeWork, the Apollo Center. I mean, there are thousands of business centers in China. I would go to some of the more well-known names just because you're going to have larger foreign invested companies there where you can really learn one from the other. A lot of these business centers, and I know the Executive Center does this, is that they also offer trainings and events to their community and their members free of charge. So, for me, although they are one of the most expensive places to rent, there are so many added benefits that are included in the charge. And investigating training opportunities with any company your startup has contact with, including investors and suppliers. Find out how they run in-house training programs, and maybe your employees could ultimately piggyback off of that. I went through all of these details without swapping the slides. I apologize for that, but I went through all these points. Now, if you are offering training to your employees, you've got to measure all the training results. So one thing that I did notice during COVID was the fact that I was offering trainings, and I did that particularly during the Shanghai lockdowns because it was more of a quiet period, and I thought, let's take advantage of this period for trainings. And some take it seriously and some don't. So the important thing is to be able to measure effectively these trainings and what return on investment is coming out of it. So apart from asking the trainer and the trainee how it went following a training session, how do you know if the objectives of the learning and development initiative have actually been met? It's important to make training a partnership and to demonstrate that the training is for the mutual benefit of the employer as well as the employee, okay? It has to be a shared mindset that improves the odds that you will uncover important data points to measure. And this is particularly important if you are spending cash to understand that there is going to be a return on investment. So you've got to be clear about what you are measuring and why. You've got to connect learning to performance and do that immediately once they are out of that training. Start with the data as your baseline already. So start with the data you already have as your baseline, and make sure you keep the KPIs that you've set very simple, but also make sure that you are transferring that your staff, your employee has KPIs associated with this training. Now, for example, when I ask my staff to do a training on writing business emails, my baseline is how they've been writing in the past, scenarios where I've had to firefight. And I then ask the trainer as a test to the workshop that the staff have to demonstrate what they have learned and create new emails that they would write. And in many instances, these emails become templates that my staff utilize as they come out of the training, but it's actually been written by the employee themselves in their words. But it helps me understand, did they actually learn anything out of this? Now, in some cases, you'll also find that the trainer writes these templates on their behalf. But I have found that I don't have to review emails anymore. Somehow the message has been learned, right? Now, if employees consistently underperform in certain tests that you're generating to them, or if you find out that actually a staff member is doing the work for the other employee because they're scared they're going to get fired and all of that type of stuff, if you find certain things out, you have to make a decision whether you let that employee go or not, okay? And the question also then is, should they repay you for the training that you have actually offered them? I do put that in my contracts. I do state that if they are going to be provided training and they do not succeed thereafter the training fee will be deducted from their salary. Now, you might also find, because this is a case study that I'm working with right now, you might also find that some companies, in order to retain certain senior managers, offer to provide MBA courses to their senior managers for specific industries, sectors, etc. So I have that right now with one client, whereby the deal is that the company will pay for the MBA course, but then the employee is tied to the company for 2 years after the MBA course is finished. He cannot look for a new job. If he does, he is required to reimburse the full MBA course fee, as well as a penalty of 2 months' salary if they go. Okay, so you can put all of these things into your contracts to protect yourself should the case arise that they decide to go. The next is spread the word of your training opportunities to others. Startups in China that provide employees with access to high quality training are few and far between. And obviously during the COVID pandemic, this budget for many companies was completely removed because their objective was survival. So ultimately it is a clear advantage, competitive advantage, if you are looking to poach employees from competitors, if you're looking to retain staff, etc. So my big spiel is, why not publicize the training opportunities and benefits with targeted PR? I personally don't do that. I raise these opportunities in the interviews, especially in the final round of interviews, when I'm narrowing it down to the last 4 or 5 candidates. I do say that we offer training opportunities, and I would love to hear what kind of training they're looking for. I always want somebody to answer something on this, because I believe that people should be evolving and learning consistently and continuously. If somebody is kind of stuck in their ways, I find them very old-fashioned. And considering that we are in a climate in China where regulations are changing daily, I need somebody who is willing to evolve and change the way they think and their mindset to make sure that we are in compliance in general in China. So, you know, in the interview phase, you can also ask candidates, have you received training from your previous employers? What training did you receive? And what training are you looking for to grow within the organization? No harm in doing that. What I have found is that lights light up with certain candidates about the training, and then they kind of are like, yeah, I'm actually on the side already doing a course in X, Y, and Z. And I can kind of say, okay, well, that's not something that's important or I have value on. What else would you be learning? Or I can say, yes, I have value in that. That's fantastic. I can help and support you in that way. And again, it's about staff retention, how to keep your staff for longer periods of time, right? You don't want to have high turnover. Okay, you want people who are really keen to grow with your business as you are scaling. Now, don't stop there. Training is clearly important for both employees and employers. It shouldn't be treated in isolation. Nurturing motivated staff is essential for any business in China, whether you've been there for 1 month or whether you've been there for 10 years. New companies to the Chinese market need to consider different ways to create a happy, stable workforce consistently and continuously. Not that you offer one training program in 1 year and then you actually completely forget about it and all of your new employees get nothing. Okay, this has to be a program that is developed internally for all of your employees. And again, it might be a greater cost to you in terms of all your HR costs, but ultimately it's going to help you to retain the employees and keep your employees from being poached from your competitors. I always say that staff relationships are a bit like a happy marriage. 2 key components, trust and communication, are vital. Trust and communication. You need to be crystal clear and transparent about the job roles, about what you are offering, but you also need to be firm and set boundaries so that the employees don't walk all over you, okay? And it all needs to make sense based on your business and your business needs. What I highly recommend though, is don't promise something that you cannot keep. That will just leave a bad taste in your employee's mouth from day one. Now, involving staff in the development of the company is critical. Keep an open door policy. I unfortunately work in a sector and industry, and this is anywhere in the world, where accountants are not necessarily the most communicative of people. They don't voluntarily come out with advice. It's something that I have been encouraging them to do. This came from me, not from a training course. Open door policy. I try to have one-to-one meetings every so often with each of my staff members. And lo and behold, I get a lot of feedback and information about how to improve the internal environment, or also how to improve the developmental programs for my team. They might have heard of a course that I've never heard of. They might want to do X, Y, and Z that I never even thought of. They I also try to encourage them to tell me where their weaknesses lie every so often. It is important to have these conversations and this open communication. It will only build trust and loyalty with the staff, particularly when it comes from the higher ups. And you will learn a lot more about how you could potentially retain the staff. Now, of course, if your budgets are too restrictive, you have to prioritize what is important for you and the company. That's natural. But you also need to then communicate that to the staff, saying, right now we're cash strapped, we're focusing on these developmental programs, but when the environment improves, please reapproach me and we can definitely think about adding this in later on, okay? So definitely keep that motivation alive for your staff. Make sure that you are building that trust and confidence with them, that they realize that with you and with your organization, they will increase their individual performance. You will increase competitiveness, and obviously, ultimately, you're boosting retention. So that's the end of today's presentation, ultimately. Please do evaluate. You can very easily Google or Bing free online courses in Shanghai. You can also look at the training programs that are offered by the individual chambers of commerce in China. You can also look at the training programs that are being offered by the China and your related country association at home. You can actually Google and find a lot of these things versus actually going to a training company to then get these exorbitant prices and packages. Really, most of the time, it does not make sense. So use these avenues to see what is available and understand a little bit your budget. But before you do any of this, right, as you're interviewing candidates, you'll also find out what are the issues with certain people's skill sets. Find specific trainings for that. Some of them, again, might actually be free of charge. Then evaluate what you want to get out of someone. What are your expectations from someone? You have to understand that the mainland Chinese people have been educated in a very different way than us in the West. They do not know necessarily how to think outside of a box. If you have found employees that have lived abroad or traveled a lot abroad, they will be more open-minded. But for those that have never traveled abroad, never really, they've stayed within China for a long, long period of time, you will find that they live in a world which is inside a box. And sometimes they don't know how to think outside of the box, how to be creative with their thinking, etc. Don't blame them. That's kind of the education system in China. The question is how can we train those individuals to learn to think in a different way? And there are these types of trainings that are readily available. So that's the end of today's program, of today's roundtable. If you guys have any questions, insert them into the chat box. Ask away. If you've got any questions, like I said, chat box. If you don't know about us, just very briefly, we at Woodburn are a corporate services firm. We help clients with their market entry and expansion within mainland China and Hong Kong. And all of our services are administrative services where we help you make sure that your entities in China are in compliance and that you are doing things basically the right way. Now, if you're interested in learning more about how to employ talent in China, set up a one-to-one call with me. You can just email me at Kristina@woodburnglobal.com, and we can set up a call. Last but not least, just our last sessions before the holidays. November 30th, I'm talking about how to find the right people for your organization. What are the channels to find people in China? And then December 7th, we're looking at individual and corporate risks and precautions for foreign investors. And then December 14th, how to avoid fraud and manage human resources in Chinese companies as well. So if any of these topics are of interest to you, I mean, you have all, those that are watching live, you've all signed up for it. You'll get the updates on this anyhow. But if you do have any colleagues who you would like to join or any other third parties, they can subscribe and join the roundtables. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. There's no questions that have popped in, so I will leave it there. Have a great afternoon. Take care and goodbye.